All right, returning to part two. We just finished up talking about ESC, so the next thing we're going to move to is the motor. So we went from flight controllers, which connects to the ESC, and then the ESC is going to connect to the motors. So this is another, I don't know, another place where you have a lot of options, and there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and the vast majority of opinions probably doesn't matter. Just go out and fly it, and you'll figure it out. But like, this is one of the areas where I think a lot of people spend a lot of money for not a whole lot of value because there's a lot of nowadays there's a lot of good cheap motors, and you'll find out very quickly that spending too much money on motors might not be the best bang for the buck. But uh, we'll go ahead and get into this. When we talk about motors, we usually talk about them with the brand name and four digits. Okay, so it's usually like, for example, Tiger Motors 2208 or Tiger Motors 2206. So what we're talking about is the brand, and then the two numbers are actually split up to represent the size of the motors. The first two numbers, 22, would be the diameter of the motor, and then the last two digits is actually what I would call the height of the motor. So those two combined together will give you overall dimensions of the motors, which then you can kind of convert to how powerful the motor is. Is that is that how you guys look at it? Because that's kind of how I look at it.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So,
I
uh,
would say that you can have the same size motor but different KV, which is has
yeah.
everything to do with the windings.
Yeah.
Uh, do either of you know a lot about windings? Because I know crap about windings.
I I actually did at one point attempt to try to understand it, but and I even had a bunch of motors and I bought a bunch of copper to rewind some motors and like no, this
No.
is not worth my time.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially what it is that the windings, basically what you're doing is sending an electric current through a bunch of copper wires, which makes an electromagnetic field, and that is what spins the motors because
Hmm.
there's a bunch of magnets on the thing. Something about the number of times that you wrap the copper
Yes.
wire around itself inside of the motors determines the speed at which it will spin.
And I believe that there are
And
two popular winding patterns, and the one that I know of is the star pattern, and I forget what the other one is called.
Hmm.
yeah,
But it's also like along with the windings, like you said, the pattern in which it's wound at is like kind of like the timing, right? Is
mhm,
in the way that I was understanding the start pattern. If you actually start with one wire, like I said, there's three wires that go into the motor, and so in return you're going to have three main windings, right? And when you wind one side, you go over to the opposite side that you're winding, and you wind that side, and you just kind of step around the motor, skipping every part of the stator. If you ever look down in the motor, you'll understand when you look down at the stator, it has like those the individual arms that stick out from the stator.
Yep. If you ever blow up a motor, go ahead and take it apart and look at it. It's actually kind of cool how it does it because this is where like I don't understand how like they ever figured this out because it's exactly what they say is true is that the way that they wind copper in the inside of the motors determines how quickly the motors can spin and at what speeds. So I should have said torque and speed, but anyways, KV. They've already mentioned the word KV. Paul, do you kind of want to explain KV since you already started explaining winding, anyways?
yeah. It's just a I believe it's just revolutions per volt that goes into it, and so essentially as if you so you have a three cell battery which does 12 around 12 volts, and if you have a four cell battery, it does around 15 volts. And depending on how much voltage is making it to the motor, the fastest it can spin is um, the maximum amount of
Yeah,
voltage from the battery times um,
yeah, you got it right.
times the kV number. So if you have a 2300 kV motor and you're feeding it 15 volts, you just multiply those two and you get the maximum RPM.
Yeah,
I'm not going
that's
to do that in my head.
that's the theoretical full throttle. Most people don't try to attain that, but technically speaking, it could have the potential to rotate at that theoretical number. Like, I don't think any of us really cares if we actually attain that number because most of us are probably usually at 50 to 75% throttle. But it's important. Before I go into something else, do you want to add anything about KV and windings, Zach?
Just that usually the way that I look at it is the lower the kV, the more voltage that you can put through the motor, but it also causes the motor to become bigger in size. So you like your big motors that usually go on your big AP rigs, you know, they're usually like
Aerial
900.
photography.
Yeah, aerial photography. They're usually like 900 kV, but they'll support up to a 6S battery.
Which is was it 3.3 times 6, and that's the voltage. It's like 24.4, I think, something like
Yeah.
that.
But
So
what's happening is that as you're lowering the amount of kV but increasing the amount of volts you're putting into it, you're trading the speed at which it spins for
Torque.
Torque and efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get more torque for your voltage as opposed to more speed for your voltage. And so on a bigger, lower kV motor, you're going to put bigger and bigger props that will convert the torque into energy in a different way. So you're drawing less power at the same time to increase your torque.
yeah, this is one of those things where it's kind of hard to explain because there's a lot of forces going on. But in essence, what they're saying is that so what happens is that, and this is true for all things mechanical, is that like I'll just throw out a very common number: a 2206 motor running at 2300 kV. That's a very common motor size. So it's 22 millimeters in diameter, 6 millimeters high, and it's gonna do 2,300 revolutions per volt. What happens is that if you put a 5-inch prop on that motor, uh, theoretically on a 4S battery, that combo it does really well. When you add a 6-inch prop to the same motor, what happens is that you're adding a lot more surface area that motor has to push. So in order to get to its theoretical maximum, the ESC is going to have to pump more power into that motor. And what that happens is that it's going to get hot because it's trying to attain what you told it to attain. In the only way that it'll try, it might not get to the theoretical maximum, but what happens is that when you do that, you're pushing the motor past its thermal specs. It'll still do it until it dies on you.
Melts down.
It melts down. That's why we lower the kV and we increase the motor sizes, because we're adding more copper, which gives it more torque, which means it has more force to be able to turn that bigger surface area, which lowers the temperature, which gives you a more efficient motor. Yada yada yada. There are some things that will actually change that theory around, but in that's about what it is. Is that you're trading off, in order to spin a larger prop, you're trading revolutions because you need a bigger motor, because you need that the more torque in order to spin that propeller. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to add to that. No? Oh, hey.
Yeah. We essentially just pick the size that suits us best and just stick with it.
Yeah. Actually, go ahead.
In general, we tend, for our little mini racing quads, we try to stick with what the 2204s, the 2206, and that's kind of like the popular size for mini racing quads. In the micro size, you got the 1806, the 1306 size. And then the step up, if you're going to swing a 6-inch prop, the 2206 and the 2208s are really popular.
Yeah, it's just it's basically, can you swing that prop to the theoretical maximum? I will say, like I like to push motors. Like I'll put small motors on big 6-inch props, and like I get them really hot just to see what they will do. I will say this: the better quality the bearings are, the more reliable that they will still continue to run even when it's super hot.
Yeah.
It's one that's where you actually pay the money. I would say you pay money for the ball bearings. That's what.
I heated some up too much the other night. They didn't poof, but they were quite uncomfortably hot when I touched them after they came down
Uh,
6-inch.
Well, the shaft is also very important, right?
oh
Because
yeah,
you don't want the shaft to bend, and it's such a it's already such a precision type device that even the slightest bend in that shaft will cause the motor not to function right.
yeah. The shaft is actually the basically the pillar that runs straight down the middle of the motor, and it's what allows it to rotate perfectly center. Which, oh, what?
The three main pieces of a motor is that you have um, the bell, which is the outer part of the motor that spins around the core, which is the stator, and then you have the prop adapter that usually goes on top of the motors. And a lot of the motors that's already being integrated into the bell of the motor, so it's really just two pieces.
It really is. What's your favorite combo for prop and motor for you, Paul?
My go-to is right now the Sunny Sky 2204 2300 kV, also $10 currently, and
They're good
some
motors.
5-inch prop. Depending on what I'm doing, like if I'm racing, I'll usually pick a prop that's a little bit harder to break. If I'm just doing flips and shit, I'll fly like HQ tri blades to get a little extra thrustiness. Um, and then I've just got other assorted ones that I'll throw on there. But usually usually a 5-inch bull nose for racing and a 5-inch tri blade for freestyle and acrobatics and stuff like that.
Cool. Zach, what's your go-to?
I really like 6-inch too, but I can't use them right now
I
on my
for the
build.
longest time I was running the Sunny Sky motors, and and then I switched to Tiger motors, and then from Tiger I'm trying out these Lumineer motors, and I've been really pleased with them. Um, they are on the higher end. They're like a $25 motor, but I've put these 2204s I'm running through so many different crashes, and they're still just going strong, and so I'm
Trucking.
really pleased. And as far as the prop, I'm running the 5.3 by 3 props, the HQ tri blades. Um,
3x3,
the 5 by
not 4.
5 by 4 by 3. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
5
Okay,
by
okay.
4 by 3.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah. That's kind of like my setup right now.
yeah.
I've
Go ahead.
tried to go back to a dual prop, two bladed prop, and it just doesn't feel right.
It's another one of those things where I don't want to get hooked on them.
Yeah.
You don't,
I've got
dude.
some Dal V2 tri blades coming to try out, so I'll let you guys know how those are, because
Cool.
hopefully that will lower the cost of breaking
Yes.
expensive props. Because the tri blades right now, it's essentially $1.50 a prop, and they break pretty easily.
Really easily.
As opposed to like 75 cents on the low end for props. So it's kind of like
And
it
all right.
hurts.
And
If you have a
week alone,
3 prop crash, you're out
in this week
4.5.
alone, I've gone through $40 worth of tri blades.
I hate tri blades too, but you know what? Tri blades are fun,
They're a
especially
lot
if
of
you.
fun.
Yeah.
And I like to break stuff because it means you're pushing it. You're doing something cooler. But we're not sponsored pilots. We can't afford to wreck thousands of dollars in props.
It's very true. I also actually my favorite motors are the 1806 motors. I like light motors, but I'll be honest with you, they're really easy to break, or at least they're easy to bend. But I like light motors. I like. Go ahead.
I'm really liking 1806 on a 180 sized quad.
Yeah.
I didn't really like my 2204s on a 180 sized quad. With 1806, it's pretty fun. I really want to try some 1806 2700 kV. So they're going to spin a little bit faster and provide a little bit more thrust, even for their smaller size. I'd be curious to see what that's like.
It's true. And I'm also using the 2204s, and I really like those. What you'll find is that some of the newer motors coming out are really efficient, and like I know, like when I'm flying, I can push almost 7 to 9 minutes of flight time if I'm easy on it, and that's a really long time flying. It's actually kind of amazing. You almost think like, why am I still in the air? Because like I came from when it was like 3 minutes. I think Zach, you know what I mean, right? It's like wow, that's it, 3 minutes, and it's like half
Yeah.
an hour charging.
Right. That's I
I
was
was
running a 2206 size motor, and I dropped down to a 2204 motor, and it was like 2 extra minutes of flight time. Wow. You
That's
know.
crazy. I was talking to my buddy Zach Moore from Mini Quad Bros earlier today, and he was saying that they're releasing motors. I don't know what they're rebranded from, but they're 2204 3200 kV motors aimed at 180 quads. He said they were doing almost a kilogram of thrust each on 4 cell on a 180 frame. So like you're talking a quad that weighs, you could, with the right battery, you could do less than 400 grams, with each of the four motors doing 1,000 grams, giving you a thrust to weight ratio of nearly 10. So that's ridiculous. So I'm kind of like eyeing those like, that could be fun.
Rotor Creeks released a motor that was supposed to be Cobra Killers.
Right,
So
exactly.
There's always a
So
Cobra Killer.
there's some interesting combinations of KV and size and props that will give you some interesting results.
Yeah, do your own research on that and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
But
yes,
I will say this: ESC and motor combinations they get pricey because you have to times everything by 4. So be careful.
I will say don't go with the
Five.
cheapest though.
Five.
Do not go with the
Always
cheapest.
there.
Don't go out and buy something off eBay that has no brand on it.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I think the value brand to beat right now is probably the Sunny Skies. I think I'm with you on that. It's a good motor,
It's
and
really good.
yeah,
They used to be like $25 motors, and they just haven't changed in a long time, and that's a toxic thing in the minds of multi-pilots. So they're just on sale now because they're still cheaper to make than $10. So it's like they're still $20 motors. They're just being sold for $10 because the market is looking at getting the extra 30 grams of thrust or whatever.
yeah, which you don't need. I mean, especially if you're starting out, yeah, I don't understand, but there are a lot of new motors coming out, just like there's a lot of new flight controllers, and just keep in mind that of the parts on the quad that's going to wear out the fastest, motors will be one of them because it's doing all of the work. Okay, it's the biggest mechanical object that's actually moving, so you'll wear them out. I know, Zach, you've replaced ball bearings on motors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kept them working. I've
Yes.
never actually did that. I just usually replace motors, but I've only like maybe destroyed on my lifetime maybe 2 motors.
It really all depends on the motor. That's the nice thing about a more expensive motor is usually they're built to have parts be replaced. Wow.
Is that all you destroyed?
These could all probably be fixed,
But
and this is not all of them.
Tiger motors are known for that, where you can replace every part of the Tiger motor. And usually what you're breaking in a motor is a shaft or a bearing is going bad, right? So those are two easy things to replace. A lot of these budget type motors, what they're doing though is they're actually gluing the bearings in place. So you actually end up destroying the motor trying to get the bearing out. So again, when choosing a motor, don't always go for the cheapest thing because you might go for a more expensive motor and just buy cheap replacement parts to keep it going.
It's true. Although I'll be honest, I've never repaired a motor, but I do think that when you buy a more high quality motor, you get a better chance of motors all acting the same. I've put on cheap motors where one of them will be a bad rabbit, and your quad won't fly well because you just got a lemon in the motor, and that will happen. So just be wary of that. Sometimes you have to troubleshoot even new stuff coming out of the box, which kind of sucks. But I don't think I have anything else to say about that subject. Do you guys?
I could talk about motors all night long.
Yeah.
No.
So we better move on as a result.
Okay. The next thing I have on my list is the receiver. That's just basically the part that connects to your flight controller that allows you to talk to your radio. There's really not that much to talk about it, except for the ways that they talk about, which is PWM, PPM, and S-Bus. Those are the three main communication protocols that your flight controller can understand. Do you two want to talk about that real quick? And I'm going to be right back. I need to charge something real quick.
No, you're good.
So,
yeah. No, I think the only thing that's really there to say is that there's S-Bus and non-S-Bus right now. Those are the two buzzwords for receivers. Those that run the S-Bus shave off like 15 seconds, milliseconds of delay between you changing something on your stick and the quadcopter responding to it, which is significant when you're flying really fast. I personally don't have any quads that run S-Bus yet.
I don't either.
I fly okay still, so it's kind of like, it was to have. I'm going to buy myself one soon to try it out and hopefully get hooked, but not too worried.
I honestly, I don't know if I can fly a quad good enough to tell a difference between PPM and S-Bus. I don't know. I've never tried S-Bus, so I can't really.
You are. You'd be surprised. I flew a friend's that is running S-Bus. I could tell it was much snappier and much quicker. I don't know if it matters, but it felt better.
As far as like, and I'm going to ask these questions as somebody that doesn't know, but so like going into a roll, is it? Do you feel like you know when to release a lot sooner, or do you think it responds quicker to the release?
So I would actually pick a roll as a bad example because a roll is totally muscle memory.
Right.
It's now I know how fast, or my muscles and my brain knows how fast my quad is going to roll. So when I do it, it's just I'm done.
Right.
I just know how much to do it. So it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be coming out of it. Really, it's just I'm just going to do it and I'm going to count on it doing the same thing as it did the last time. In a race where I'm still getting used to the course, or it's not something that I have down to muscle memory, that's where it's going to become more important. Is you come around and you're dynamically calculating, okay, now I need to come back to level, and that's where that extra little bit of something is going to help you. And that is where I have noticed that it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
I don't
like
know if
the X4. Like I'm going to talk specifically about Tranis remote and receiver stuff because I think
Free Sky is the brand.
Yeah,
yep.
It's really popular. I think that the D4R2, which is like the really popular one right now,
non-S-Bus
PPM, right? It's running at what 22 milliseconds.
Yeah,
I don't know the numbers. Sorry.
Yeah,
I think it's 22 milliseconds, and then S-Bus, which is the X4R.
X4R-2SB or something like that. Yeah.
And that's running on S-Bus, and that's running at 5 milliseconds.
Yeah.
So that's the difference in speed. Which it's really, I mean, when you're talking milliseconds, like that's not a big difference, but you're saying that you can actually tell a difference.
Think about it in terms of like a video game. So if you're playing online, you're playing Call of Duty or something like that, the difference between 50 milliseconds and 70 milliseconds is pretty significant to a degree. I mean, when you're playing a really twitchy shooter like that, like you'll notice it once in a while.
Doing
and
those corner peaks.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that same feeling translates to flying a quad. So like just having that extra little bit of edge really does help. But it's not going to be a complete game changer. It still comes down to how well you're flying.
Sure.
Yeah, I will say
Well, I
this right
have
now.
one. I should put it in there and try it.
Yeah, I will say this right now. As a person who has tried all three, I can't feel a difference. But I am the least experienced of the flyers. It doesn't matter to me,
Now,
to be
I
honest.
can say that running S Bus does open up all 16 channels of the Free Sky Tranis, whereas PPM you're limited to 8 channels, and I think even at the 8 channels, you still kind of get some overlap. So really, they say run 6 channels and you'll be fine on PPM.
Yeah.
Um, for before I was running the Tranis, I was a big Spectrum guy, and the problem with Spectrum, if you weren't running the satellite, which is PPM, you were having to run PWM, which is every single channel gets its own wire going with flight controller. So you had this really big nasty wire. Here, I'll pull one out. You had a wire kind of like this, that every single channel would then plug into the flight controller.
I think I've thrown all of mine away. I've never used it.
Never used it. So, with the Spectrum, and I would say Spectrum is probably that's a really popular brand, right?
It is.
With the mini quad stuff, having the satellites, you have to kind of make your own little cable or directly solder it to the flight controller. It's just a really bad setup. Whereas the Tranis, the receiver, it's just one single receiver wire that plugs into the board, and then the other side plugs into the receiver, and you're done. The reason for that is because the Spectrum satellites are actually are serial, where the D4R2, it actually goes over the digital port. So that's another thing to keep in mind when selecting a receiver and transmitter, is how much you want to fool with.
Yeah.
By the way,
get the Tyrannus, get the D4R,
Yes.
or get the SB X4R. If you think you're going to stick in this for more than 2 months, just get that. You won't be disappointed. You can do anything you'll ever want. It will grow with you. It is what the pros fly. It's
the
can't.
Spectrum DX6 is as much as a Tranis, so.
And it's horrible.
It is not horrible. By the way,
and all your hardware is expensive.
You only get 6 channels though. That sucks.
It does. You know what? I like Spectrum, so I'm gonna disagree with these guys. And if you like Spectrum satellite, you can find a flight controller with a port for it easily. And screw you both. No, I'm kidding. Actually, I fly a Free Sky too, so I can't really say anything. But I do have.
I like my Tranis. I still have my DX7 and DX7S, and it's probably one of the best transmitters I've ever owned. And I enjoy having all the gizmos of my Tranis and having the telemetry stuff, and having my controller talk to me, is pretty cool.
All right. We're getting off subject. Okay, so.
Oh yes, keep playing with my knobs.
Yes.
That's it. It's over. Now. All right. It's not really that big of a subject, and so basically the receiver, it's how your quad or your multi-rotor talks to your radio. It's kind of important. Figure out what radio you like, buy the appropriate receiver that fits into the right flight controller. It's really all there is to it. And until you've put about at least 500 hours, maybe 200 hours into it, you probably won't feel the difference between any three. Or ever, in my opinion. But
that's one of those like user preference things. You get locked into a transmitter and receiver. It's really hard to switch to another platform because it doesn't feel right.
You've invested a lot of hardware too. Like you've got your your transmitter and your receivers and your batteries and all that stuff. And it's just like,
Yeah, basically.
but yeah.
All
So
right.
get the Tyrannus. I need like a referral code or something.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing. No, it's not the last thing. It might be one of the last things. In order for your flight controller to actually work, it needs to receive power. What you'll find, traditionally, all of the old ways that the flight controller got power was that it's got it from the ESC itself. There was actually a step down that basically channeled 5 volts to your flight controller. That is no longer in vogue. Almost all flight controllers now do not do that. So it's up to you usually to go find a different place to get that 5 volt power. And this is where kind of the rise of the power distribution board has come into play. There are still people that use wiring harnesses, but the problem with a wiring harness, which is basically a whole bunch of wires that runs to every component to power it, is that it's kind of messy, and most quads don't have a place for a wiring harness to fit well, and that becomes an issue in itself. I actually do like wiring harnesses. That's where I came from. But power distribution boards is basically a board that you can hook to your main battery, and then there's wires that come out of that to be able to power everything. There's really not too much to say about this subject. If you guys want to add in anything you want.
Yeah, I've done both. I like both. They
Yeah.
they each have their own benefits. One is it's a lot harder, I think, to make a good clean wiring harness, but if you can get it, it's indestructible, and it just is in there, and it probably sometimes saves a little weight, sometimes not, depending on what's going on. So
Yeah.
but yeah, they're both good. I don't recommend using structural power distribution boards. Like for example, with the ZMR frame, you have 3 plates. One is in the bottom, one's in the middle, and then one's on the top. And the middle one becomes a power distribution board. I think that is setting yourself up for failure. I have had that fail
Numerous times.
But I only once. Well, I had it once, I fixed it, and then it broke again, and then I gutted it. But
and also
you
because you
just
could crash
little
it
one.
and you're pretty much completely down because everything is directly soldered to it, right? And
Yep,
it's
you have
like
to completely replace everything,
Yeah.
and that violates my durability and fixability rule.
yes. I think what a lot of the frames are going to now is where you have just a really simple PDB board, which all the ESCs get plugged into and the battery goes into, and then you have to kind of figure out how to step down the voltage coming off the PDB board to go into your flight controller, right? I think
Mhm.
that is becoming more and more standard
Yep.
as far as some of these newer frames coming out.
Yep. Although I will say this, and I'm really glad of it. Almost all of the new boards coming out don't need a step down because they'll
Yep.
take up to 6S. So you just plug whatever battery into it, it'll step down by itself. So that will become not a problem in the near future as long as you get a newer board, which you might not because all the old stuff works just perfectly fine and they will be a lot cheaper. So if you don't want to invest a whole lot into it, it just gets a little bit more complex. You'll find a lot of the newer technology is about removing components and making stuff easier, which is always a good thing. Anything else you want to add about PDBs and wiring harnesses? Good. All right. So we've actually covered almost everything you need to make it fly. So the next segment really is about getting FPV, which is basically getting video down to you so you can fly from a pilot's perspective on your multi-rotor. So the first thing we're going to cover is the camera. And just for all of the new guys involved, this is a really common misconception. I didn't realize this until I started talking to a lot of people, which I've done this year, is that a lot of people actually think that the HD that they watch on YouTube is what we see. And that is not true. We do not see anywhere near the quality of picture that you see on YouTube. We actually
I
see,
wish.
yeah. What's the common lines? It's like 640 right now, maybe around there. We see 600.
600.
Yeah. So HD minimum HD is what was it? I can't remember. What is minimum HD? It's a lot more lines. I don't know what it is. We see.
I don't know in lines actually.
Yeah. So what we see is a very very poor picture. But what's important is that it's a very fast picture. In other words, it's very quick to transmit down to whatever display you're using, whether it's goggle or displays. That's really the important part. I don't really know if there's anything else you really want to talk about it. If you want to talk about the camera specifics itself or anything like that.
Just
Yeah.
buy an HS 1177 and be done with it.
Yep.
That's the
I used to buy other cameras besides the HS 1177 like you mentioned, and I broke them like once a month. And then I bought one of these. I still have the original one. I have two more. I have not been able to break one yet. They make a good picture, and they most builds are actually now built, or are like the actual construction of it requires that camera because of certain mounting mechanisms. So it's like it's $35. It's the same price as everything else out there.
Fully programmable.
Fully programmable, indestructible. Takes 5 to 24 volts. Like
you can buy new housings for it. You can buy new cables for it.
Don't do anything else. Just go buy that one.
I actually totally agree. It's a great camera. It's $35.
First time all three of us have agreed tonight. Buy the HS 1177 from Surveil Zone.
Yeah. No, you don't. It doesn't require a step down regulator. You just plug in your 4S battery or 3S or up, down to 5 volts. 5 volts to 22 volts. It doesn't matter. It will support all that.
Yep, and if you want a guide to programming it, Paul, I believe you already have something like that on your website, correct? Don't make a liar out of me. So
I have a whole video for it.
Yeah.
Just to program it.
Yeah, and it's actually a pain in the ass, to be honest with you, because it's not as easy as you think, because you don't have the proper wiring for it, so you have to make your own. That's the only thing that's a pain in the ass about the camera. But other than
I always
that,
forget how to do it, so I made the video so that I would remember how to do it.
Exactly. See.
Yeah, right.
HD cameras. That's the other thing. That's what you see on YouTube. There's really nothing to say about it except that if you put an HD camera on it, it's going to be more weight and you might break it. Because actually, have either of you broken an HD camera?
No, I've broken lenses or lens protectors.
You fly GoPro, right, Zach?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
So I don't. This isn't my GoPro, but essentially this is the lens protector, and I've broken these. Oh.
I actually took this apart to see if I could fix it, but no such luck. Yeah, this is the Xiaomi Yi. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's an $80 camera that has the same specs as a GoPro Hero 4 Black. It does not look as good, but for $80, it's pretty darn good, unless you can afford to break a couple GoPros.
Nope. And by the way, the warranty no longer covers FPV, so if you ever buy one of those, you're out of luck.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They actually wrote that into the warranty now, because somebody, I won't name who, but somebody returned 33 of them for the warranty.
Jeez.
$500 a piece times 33. Think about that.
This is $80. It does a really good job. No one has ever complained about the quality of
33 of them at one time?
No, over the course of the warranty period. So he only paid for it once and got 33 new ones.
Jeez.
And now we're all screwed. Yeah, just letting you know. I know it's in the 30s. I'm not sure if it's exactly 33. Because somebody told me that and linked it to me, and I thought that was just kind of stupid. Like, who would actually honor that? But anyways.
I've been lucky. I've been flying my GoPro since I've started FPV racing, and it is beat up. Like the main button here. This isn't the GoPro that I run, but this main button doesn't quite work right. I've lost the back housing. Yeah, it's pretty beat up.
See?
But it still works.
Okay. GoPro, please.
And this only broke because I flew 45 miles an hour straight into a wooden cross beam. and this thing,
Good.
you know, rides around on the front of the quad. And it, like, actually, the lens is pretty. I could swap the lens, but something. I think something just got jostled loose in here. But I mean, it's a pretty complicated board that I can't figure out. So it's like, man, I could maybe this could be fixed probably.
No. GoPro, you can sponsor us now. Anyways, so so we have the camera, we have the HD video, which it only records. We actually get no feed from that. From the camera, what we do is we link that to a video transmitter, and then we send it down to our ground station. So we're just going to cover all of that at once, and then just kind of talk about it.
Go buy this one.
You guys have wrecked so many of those. I'm just saying. Okay, so
Dude, they're cheap.
Buy them and epoxy them.
buy them and epoxy them. So the video transmitter is responsible for taking the video feed from your camera, the low resolution one, and sending it down. There's a few important numbers. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Hey, it's a cricket.
It's the same thing. It's just in a metal housing.
Have you broken it yet? Have you broken it in yet, Paul?
I have not flown this yet. No.
Hey, what?
It's the same thing as this, though.
But it's in the metal casing. So basically, there are a few important specs that we're going to talk about. One, the transmission frequency. Two, the power. And three, what's good for racing. So for frequency, we have, as far as I know, we have four. We have 1.3 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, 3.3 gigahertz, which is the newest one, and then 5.8, which is generally what's accepted and what's most used. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to say on that in terms of this.
Don't, unless you are the only one that you will ever fly with, like by yourself. Just do it. Buy a 200 milliwatt. You don't need 600, no matter what you think.
That's not true.
I can put a 600 milliwatt on my plane and fly it out of range of my transmitter before I lose video signal. So, and that's not something you're ever going to do with the mini racing quad. So, but if you fly with others, a 600 milliwatt will start to kind of encroach on their frequencies, and that's gonna it'll make it difficult for you to fly.
You'll make a lot of enemies that day.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
Especially if you plug in by accident and kill somebody's quad. You want anything you want to say on that? Yes, we know, Paul.
Yes, buy good antennas.
Buy good
that
antennas.
makes all the difference.
Yeah, you can get the shittiest VTX. Excuse me. Is this a family-friendly podcast? I don't know. You can buy the crappiest VTX on the market and put a good antenna on it, and it will still do well.
It's very true. Generally speaking, every VTX you'll ever buy, VTX video transmitter, just in case I didn't say it, can't remember, will come with a whip antenna. What do you guys call it? You guys have another name for it. I don't remember what the name is.
The rubber ducky?
The rubber ducky, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that thing. Nobody uses it, although I will say if you're starting out, it's perfectly fine. Because, I mean, it still gets the job done, it just doesn't do it well. But, I mean, you're spending the bulk of your money on the transmitter.
Circular polarized?
And, yep, those are circular polarized, which means that there's a bunch of antennas looped together, and it sends out the transmissions in a broader, I don't know, in a broader area, I guess is how you would say it.
So, out of these, they're all going to perform better than that rubber ducky. These right here are, $5 antennas off eBay, and they function really good. If you want something that's going to make you have a really good picture and last a long time, you can get these. I think they're like $35. I don't forget what their exact price is. They come in a pack of 2. You will never have to buy another antenna. Hopefully. I've crashed these a million times, and I haven't broken them.
Okay.
So,
Paul, I know you've broken antennas. How many have you broken?
I made the mistake of buying uncased, pretty fragile ones. I've probably gone through 5 or 6 of those. I've fixed a lot of them, so because you can usually solder them back together. Some of them have been beyond repair, but I bought one set of Blue Beam Ultras from Video Aerial System, which in my opinion are the best antennas on the market. And I still use my original set from when I first learned since March. I broke it once. That required me to put it back together, but
So
that
what
was no
he's
big
talking
deal.
about are these.
Yeah,
Zach, you got like
those.
every antenna set known to man.
Yeah, really.
And the kind that you used to run were basically something like this that was uncased.
That actually looks like the uncased blue beams, really.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But essentially, this is what's inside of that case is the fragile wires of what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I fly it like that, totally
Okay.
uncased, and it's fine.
Yeah.
I need to bend mine back into shape right now, but they're fine. I mean, I could fly just as far as I ever could.
Yep. Here's my theory on this, and you guys can probably disagree with me on this. I actually fly very cheap, very flimsy, circular polarized antennas because if I crash hard, those will break. In my VTX, I have yet to break one. So I sacrifice my antenna for longevity of my VTX.
But they're like $5, right? I mean, it costs
Frame
nothing to
design
replace it.
has improved to the point where I cannot break my VTX with my because my antenna has snapped it. I don't know what you're flying right now, but the way that my VTX is mounted, no structural impact is left onto the VTX.
Like this, so
It worked.
essentially what this is that this is part of the frame where this just kind of screws off, and it's just a little nipple, and it's like screwed down to the frame.
Yep.
Inside here, I know it's probably hard to see, but there's this extension cable right here that plugs into the VTX and then goes to the frame. Yeah, so you just have an elbow in there, a 90-degree elbow.
Yeah, and so all of the force is between the elbow and the frame.
Yeah.
And the VTX itself remains untouched. This one isn't mounted very well right now, but it's a good example. And so I just take this elbow and I literally just zip tie it straight up to the top, and all of the force is here. Putting it on a pigtail like he's got it is an even better step, because the only thing that's at risk is that SMA adapter. So and you can take a frickin' hand drill to the top frame of whatever quad you're running and put a hole just the right size in there, and any VTX will fit that just fine.
True.
I think that's an FX 790. Like he's got the Cricket does the same thing. You can see that it's flat, so they're all good.
Yeah.
So
get some expensive antennas, and you'll be good to go.
I hate expensive antennas. Anyways, so
spiral nets. Just get the spiral nets. You'll be all right.
Yeah. Few things. If you fly competitively, or actually if you fly anything, you're most likely gonna see the numbers 5.8. That's the frequency transmission of the video that's coming out of your quad and going down to your ground station. What the ground station is basically it's the goggles or the box that will receive your video. A true ground station is actually like the word ground station came from like a more professional sense in which it actually did a hell of a lot more. It did telemetry, GPS, blah blah blah. But in the hobby sense, it's just basically the way you get video down. Um, uh, and you guys can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but basically 5.8 is what we're on, but the lower the number goes, so 332413, the better the frequency is at penetrating solid objects, but the video is supposed to suffer. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. Essentially what's going on is the wavelength is getting further, or it's getting longer as far as the band, so it can travel through things like trees, buildings. But like you said, the video quality suffers a little bit. But I was actually running there for last year when we were doing the race league. I was running 1.3. I was the only guy on 1.3. and I had perfectly fine video. And in fact, why everyone was suffering because they were getting everyone was stepping on each other on the 5.8 band. I had the clearest video on the field.
It's true, actually.
But the problem is that you only have two channels to work with on 1.3. So don't think that you can get everyone on 1.3 and have a viable race.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heavy, and the antennas are really
ginormous,
big and
yeah.
break easily.
I'm sure he has a 1.3 somewhere. Also, 1.3 is an issue because it's hard for coordinators like us to work with.
So flying that thing around on mini quad is just a horrible plan.
Hey, I went through a lot of antennas, man.
So one of the things that was in your notes, though, is that people are talking about using 3.3 gigahertz, which is kind of a nice balance between 1.3 and 5.8, and the antennas are a manageable size. The gear it exists, and you're going to get huge range and pretty good penetrating power all at the same time. And so that's kind of something that we're a little bit excited about, but it's not popularized yet. It's not really tested, and I think it's technically illegal. What was that?
It's really expensive gear still.
Yeah. I'm kind of excited about it.
You'd be looking at like $150 FPV setup instead of a $50 FPV setup or $60.
Yeah, and the issue with the reason why we talk about it is that most leagues are going to be set up to run 5.8 because that's kind of what the national people have standardized on, which it's not the greatest thing, but it's the best we got. So if you're going to go out and spend money, go ahead and spend money on the 5.8, even though it might not be the best, is basically what I would say. Is that how you would see it?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I would just buy 5.8. 200 milliwatts is a really good number. Although one of the things that's really nice is that you'll see this more and more, along with some other things, is that the next generation of transmitters will be selectable in power range. So you'll be able to select 25, 200, 600, 800. So within one transmitter, you'll be able to select that entire range. So you actually won't have the issue of, oh, do I need 200? Do I need 25? Or do I need like 1,000, which I can blast through anything? So that's kind of nice. And like there's a few companies that are actually going one step further, and they're going to allow two-way communication with the video transmitter. So you can actually change settings on the video transmitter via your remote, like you can do with some things on your flight controller. So some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Yeah. Just gotta wait for it.
There's a guy, and Paul, I know that you're eyeballing his stuff right now. That is actually working on that, and it's open source, so anyone can go and figure out how to put the hardware and the software together to get it working. But the LaForge stuff, you guys can LaForge VTX, you can look that up, Google it, but check it out. It's some pretty cool stuff.
Man, their stuff is expensive too, though. But I like that there's a spectrum analyzer on there, so you can see who's using what spectrum. That's really cool. But I don't know if you got anything to say about that, Paul. Nope.
No.
He's like, no.
Yeah, that's all pretty standard.
Paul's like, I've already spent too much money on my hobby. I can't do it anymore. Hey, just one quick thing. Ground stations. This is universally accepted. I don't care what you guys say. If you can afford it, go with a diversity ground station. That's basically you have multiple receiving antennas trying to grab the best video possible. More is better. So if you can go with 2, that's great. Some people are coming out with 4, which is crazy, but that would be great. But then you have to buy like 5 antennas, which is really expensive. So
yeah.
I don't think there's really much to say about that, really.
You should talk more about the ground station and what to expect when coming to a race, because I think for a new user and especially somebody that's never been to a race, that's kind of different in how that's set up. It might confuse some people, because I know that some people kind of get bent out of shape when they feel like they can't use their stuff.
Yeah.
So if you want to
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so as a league organizer, and this is somebody who's run a league, about if I didn't have a standardized way in which I can get everybody organized in frequencies, I literally will spend 70% of my time during that league event managing people's video frequencies because you can't fly if you can't see. So what happens is that a bunch of people will bring a whole bunch of different receivers, and they're running all different types of frequencies or channels, is how they would say it. And I have to ensure that the videos don't step on another person's videos. And it's very easy to do that. So what ends up happening and what's commonly accepted at this point, especially if you go to a national event, is that they're going to have predefined frequencies, predefined channels basically, that you're going to fly on. So when you go up to that ground station, you're going to have a frequency that either your equipment needs to be on, or you're going to put equipment on your multi-rotor that's going to be on that specific frequency. This is basically to cut down on the chances of you stepping on another person's frequency, and also not having to manage everybody else's frequency, which is a giant pain in the ass. It's actually one of the reasons why uh, an association is this popular, which is MultiGP. The reason why MultiGP is really popular is that they have software specifically designed to manage frequencies, which is really difficult if your league doesn't have its own ground stations and doesn't have a way to manage all these frequencies easily. Is that a good explanation for
Yeah,
you?
yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely.
It's one of those things where it's like you would think it's easy, but it's not, because there's actually within the 5.8 gigahertz video transmissions, there's 40 different channels right now. So that means a person can show up and be on one of the 40 different channels, and it's a pain in the ass because every eight every so 40 divided by 8 is 5. So that of those 5 channels, there's a chance that one of those channels can step on four other different types of channels. Yeah, it's a giant mess. That's all I'm going to
Yes.
say.
Just because there's 40 channels
Indeed.
doesn't mean you can't have 40 people up in the air at one time.
Right.
A lot of the channels step on other channels, or bleed through is what they call it.
Yes, and I mean, Paul. I mean, you
Mhm.
relate your story. It's a good story of what happened.
Well, and that's more of a communication issue than a channel issue. But essentially, I had practiced and gotten ready for and built a bunch of stuff for a race day that I drove a couple hours to. And between heats of a race, I was out practicing, and someone decided to just power up their quad, which completely killed my video. So I have goggles over my face. My quad is 100 meters away, and I have no idea where it is, and I can't see. I yell, "Hey, power your quad down!" He's 50 meters down that way and can't hear me, and so I try to take off my goggles, and by the time I've gotten all that figured out, flying straight upside down into the ground and destroy my quad, and essentially lost the rest of the race day because of it. So
It's tough. That's one of the things as a race coordinator you never want to hear, is that somebody's day is ruined because of an accident like that. Which, by the way, and every one of us has experienced it and done something stupid on it. It's really easy to plug
It
in
is.
and screw
yeah,
somebody up. It's super easy. It's the reason why a lot of places, and like you Paul, you've experienced this at F3. They just want to give you the video transmitter so that there's really no chance of you plugging up and accidentally
yep,
killing somebody's video. It's one of the reasons, because it's so easy to step on or bleed through to somebody else's video. And you if you're going that fast, you lose video, you're probably going to crash, and you're going to crash hard.
yeah. You're not going to have the chance to take off your goggles and try to see it. Like
Yeah.
you're just hosed.
And I see it as like this hobby progresses and it gets more and more competitive. They'll probably have special equipment at these races where that won't happen because nobody will actually have those frequencies, right?
Yeah.
Like it will be some like a company like Immersion that's sponsoring the event, that's providing the race equipment.
Hmm.
or the VTX though.
Yeah, that stuff is coming. If you follow the Drone World's feeds, they're actually right now testing video transmitters that can broadcast in near HD. I don't think they say full HD yet, but near HD. That they're getting close. There
Yeah.
there's some there's some cool
I, I
technology.
I think it would be cool when we can get to the point where we can you broadcast the 360 video cameras in real time and be
Oh
able to
man,
have like an Oculus Rift on and be able to look around while you're flying FPV. That would be pretty sweet.
dude, that would be so distracting. Which way am I going? Smack. Okay. We basically just burned through FPV real quick. There's really not too much to say. It's become standardized, pretty well standardized, and like most people run the same thing. The only thing that's different is they'll run different brands of video transmitters and different ground station brands. But it's all the same thing at the end of the day. Really, the last thing that I want to talk about, and we'll just touch briefly on, is batteries. So obviously you put all this together, you now have something that can fly and that you can FPV with. You're gonna have to power your craft, and there's really two types of batteries that we fly. We fly 3-cell batteries and 4-cell batteries. Either of you want to try to tackle that first? Zach, I choose you.
You choose me to talk about it. All right. So when choosing a battery, choose a good brand. Um, don't buy something that's going to not last. Uh, think of your batteries as an investment because it's really the thing that takes a lot of beating because you're using high powered motors, high powered ESCs that are pulling a lot of current. And if you don't have the capability of pushing the current that the quad requires, you're going to make the battery what we call poof, and that's where the battery swells because it's getting over amped, and you're just going to ruin those batteries. So when choosing a battery, choose a battery that has a high C rating. Um, Really, there's so many brands out there. Just choose something that a lot of people are talking about. I guess is the best way to do it. Me personally, I like Tattoo batteries. Um, I have some of these Thunder Power batteries to try out. Um, even the Glacier batteries that I get from
Buddy
Buddy
RC.
RC, they're 75C and they've been doing really well. So find a good battery, it has a high C rating, and roll with it. That's one thing that I suggest that you try different brands to see what you think is best.
Yeah, it's pretty true. You got anything you want to add real quick, Paul?
I am not totally sold on expensive batteries. To be not in the sense that I have expensive batteries. I fly $40 tattoos because that's what I bought and I really like them. I also fly really, really crappy 3-cell batteries that I couldn't tell the difference between one 3-cell and another. So that's and that's 3-cell. Maybe 4-cell is a completely different experience. So I don't know. If next time I buy batteries, I'm going to try some mid-range, cheaper end 4-cells to just see what happens. Like, I mean, regardless, I can still practice with them and fly my expensive batteries at a race or something like that, and just to see what it's like. But
and just to kind of add to that, even buying some of the expensive batteries like the Lumineer batteries, I mean, I have a ton of these 1800s that have just randomly died on me. So
I hate those. They break so easily.
yes, so
I've broken 2 of them.
I've broken 4 of them. So I mean,
easy crashes.
Yeah. Uh, Buying the most expensive battery is not always the best.
Yeah. Anybody want to explain C rating real quick?
It's basically the amount of current that it can discharge. So
Safely.
And I believe that it's you take the C rating times the milliamp hour.
Yeah.
And that gives you your amp draw.
Yeah. General rule of thumb for me, and this is just for me. Maybe you two will have something different, but I would say I like for 3 cell. I don't generally like falling under 45C. And for 4 cell, just because if you're gonna go up that high, you're gonna be pushing your batteries really hard. Try to stay above 60 is what I would say. Those are my general rule of thumbs.
I've had 60C Hobby King batteries that have lasted me a long time, and they run really good. But their 60C batteries are not a whole lot less expensive than, say, a Tattoo or a Glacier pack. Um, like
I
the
have I have won all of my 3 cell races on 25 to 50C batteries, nanotechs.
You know, you have 25s that you actually fly, and they actually
25
survive.
to 50C 3 cell
they look
nanotechs.
pregnant.
Yep.
No,
They actually all look pretty good, but yeah, I toasted one um, at a race, but that's
hey,
because
I like
flew it
my
too long.
zippy packs.
Dude, I
It,
hate those. Oh god.
Dude, I came from the Hobby King battery world, and moving to the upper brands like the Tattoos and the Glaciers or whatever. Um, I can tell a difference. When I first started flying quads, racing quads, I really wasn't pushing my quads to the limit like I am now. So there really wasn't any need to have that high C rating.
It's true. Cool. Anything else you want to add, Paul, about batteries?
Get something in the middle of the road, feel it out. Get something expensive later. See if you like it more. If you like it more, go buy expensive ones. It all comes down to what you like.
Yeah. Good
I've
thing
said that a
about
lot tonight, but
yeah. Well, the good thing about it is that you can buy 1 or 2 batteries, and then you can kind of feel it out. It's generally speaking,
yep.
you don't save too much money buying in bulk in batteries. So
No.
unfortunately, that's actually all I had for the agenda. We actually covered pretty much every component in a good 2 hour time span. Is there anything else you two want to add before we start wrapping up?
Well,
Nope. Good. All right. This is the chance for us to tell us what you guys have been doing and plug your stuff. So, Paul, where can you be found at?
What was that?
Where can you be found at?
Oh, youtube.com/c/bulbufet FPV. Bulba Fett FPV. Yeah, and I post a lot of videos again about kind of behind the scenes of being a multi-rotor pilot.
He likes it. He likes it a lot. Zach, what about you? Have you
uh,
got your website up yet?
no, I don't have a website or anything like that. I post some flight videos. You can find me at youtube.com/c/z Scally. That's ZSCALLY. Yeah, go
Yeah.
check it out.
Cool, cool. And you know where I am because you're watching this video on my channel. Appreciate you two coming out, and we'll see you on hopefully another podcast in which we'll cover something else. By the way, if the audience that are watching these, and I know you're out there because I see the numbers. If you have a suggestion, write it in the comments. We'll read them, and we'll make our ID, or we'll make the next podcast off some of the best suggestions. And we'll try to impart as much knowledge as we know, and just try to have fun along the way. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Appreciate you two being here, and that's it.